The rest stop stranger, a true midnight encounter. I was alone at a deserted rest stop in the middle of the night, just stretching my legs after hours on the highway, when I noticed him. There was this man just standing inside the bathroom, not using it, just staring. His shoes squeaked with every small step he took, and honestly, I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. When I finally reached my car, he was outside, waiting. The moment I locked my door, he tapped on the window. Tap, tap, tap. Then, without saying a word, he smiled. It wasn't friendly. This happened when I was 24. I'm Thomas, and at the time I was driving cross country for work. It was late, well past midnight, when I pulled into a rest stop somewhere in Oklahoma. The place was almost completely empty. There were just a few trucks and a single sedan sitting on the other side of the lot. The fluorescent lights above the bathrooms flickered like they were on their last legs, and the air was thick with humidity. I parked, stretched my legs, and figured I'd hit the restroom. Walking inside, I was hit with that sharp, familiar smell of mildew and industrial disinfectant, the kind that makes your eyes water. I went to the sinks and started washing my hands, just thinking about the long stretch of highway ahead. That's when I heard the faint squeak of shoes behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and just froze. A man had stepped in. He was tall, wiry, and unkempt, with greasy hair sticking out from under a stained baseball cap. His eyes seemed to scan the room with this slow, deliberate motion. He didn't head toward a urinal or a sink. He just stood there, watching me. I dried my hands real quick, avoided his gaze, and pushed the door open. My stomach dropped the instant I realized his footsteps followed mine. Close, way too close. Outside, the lot felt unnervingly empty. My car looked distant, parked far from the building. I walked faster, and yes, so did he. I could hear it now, ragged breathing, shallow and quick, almost like he was excited. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my keys. Then I heard his voice, low and scratchy, only a few feet behind me. "You headed west?" I froze. I turned slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of his expression. His smile was too wide, stretched in a way that made my chest tighten. His hands were shoved in the front pocket of a hoodie, fingers wrapped around something I couldn't see. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to stay calm. I yanked open the door, slammed it shut behind me, and locked it. He tapped on the window with one finger. Tap, tap, tap. I watched his face press close to the glass. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but it looked like he said, "You'll stop again." Then, without saying another word, he smiled. And man, it wasn't friendly. I floored it out of the lot, heart hammering in my chest. My hands shook on the wheel as I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him chasing me on foot. But there was nothing, just the empty road, bathed in the headlights of my car. I didn't stop for another 2 hours, scanning every side street and exit ramp. I still don't know if he followed me that night, but I can't get that smile out of my head the way it stretched too wide in the flickering light. Like he knew something I didn't. Like he had plans that involved me. I remember thinking about the encounter for days afterward. Every time I parked somewhere, walked into a store, or even used a bathroom at night, I imagined him there just standing, waiting, silent, watching. It wasn't just fear of physical harm. It was something worse, the idea that someone could appear out of nowhere, knowing exactly when and where to catch you, and you'd have no clue why. A week later, I found myself traveling a similar route. By then I'd convinced myself it was a one-off, a random creep, and that I was safe. But as I drove past that same exit, my stomach dropped. I caught sight of someone on the shoulder, a figure standing perfectly still, facing the highway. For a brief second, I could swear he looked right at me. I didn't stop. Not that night, not ever again. I try not to think about the what-ifs, but it's hard. What if he had decided I was an easy target? What if I had parked closer to the building? What if I had looked back 1 second too late? Those questions still linger, and I know they always will. That night taught me something about fear. It's not loud or obvious, it's quiet, creeping, and patient. The guy didn't shout or threaten me outright. He didn't chase me down the lot. All he did was show up, exist in that space, and let my mind fill in the rest. That's the part that's terrifying, how much control someone can have over your fear without ever lifting a hand. I learned to be hyper-aware, to trust my gut in ways I hadn't before, to always park in well-lit areas, always check the mirrors, always lock the doors, and even now, years later, that instinct is still there, like a shadow. I've told a few people about the encounter since, always cautiously, never with too much detail. Most people shrug it off, but I know what I saw, I know what I felt, and I know that in a moment of vulnerability, a restroom break in the dead of night alone, you can meet someone who changes the way you see the world, permanently. The thought that anyone could appear like that without warning is a kind of terror you can't shake. You can lock your doors, park in bright spots, and look both ways. But what if they're patient? What if they wait until the moment you let your guard down? That's the reality I faced that night, and it's one that's never left me. I still drive those highways, of course. Work doesn't stop for fear, but I'm different now. I notice everything, the flicker of a light in a distant parking lot, a shadow behind a bush, the sound of shoes that don't belong, and every time I see a rest stop after midnight, I feel that same chill, that same sick tightening in my stomach, remembering the night I met the stranger who didn't need to say a word to terrify me. Because sometimes the most frightening things aren't supernatural. They're real, they're human, and they're out there, waiting. What would you have done if this happened to you? Don't keep it to yourself. Please comment below. And if real horror is your thing, subscribe to Sights of Horror and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. The Man at the Window, True Horror Story. I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my window. Not quick steps, slow, heavy, deliberate crunches on the wet leaves. At first I told myself it was an animal, but then I heard breathing, deep, raspy, human breathing. When I turned my head toward the window, I saw a face pressed against the glass, smiling, watching me. And the worst part, he was enjoying the fear in my face. This happened when I was 19. I'm Sophie, and at the time I was staying at my parents' house while they were away on vacation. It was early September, humid, sticky nights where the air feels trapped inside the house. My bedroom faced the backyard, and beyond that was a thick tree line that ran along the edge of the property. It was the kind of woods where even in daylight the shadows seemed endless. That night I had my window cracked just a little to let air in. I remember lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, half asleep. The house was dead quiet. That's when I heard it. At first just the faint crunch of leaves, slow, deliberate. My first thought was maybe a deer had wandered too close, but something about the pacing was off, too even, too heavy. I muted my phone and held my breath. The footsteps got closer. Then, They stopped. For a few seconds, the silence was so complete, I thought maybe I was just imagining it. But then I felt it, that creeping sensation that someone's watching you. My skin prickled. I forced myself to look at the window, and that's when I saw him, a man, his face pressed against the glass, his breath fogging up the window as he stared directly at me. He didn't move, didn't speak, just grinned. I froze. My muscles locked. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My phone was on the bed next to me. I slowly grabbed it and dialed 911, whispering into the receiver that someone was outside my window. The operator's voice was calm, telling me officers were on the way. I tried to believe that. I tried to stay calm, but then he tapped on the glass, lightly, almost playful. Tap, tap, tap. I backed up, clutching the phone. The taps grew harder, sharper, until it was a full-on pounding. The window rattled. I screamed and bolted to the bathroom, locking the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Then came the sound I was dreading, the shatter of glass, followed by heavy boots on the floor. He was inside. I pressed myself against the bathroom wall, whispering to the dispatcher that he'd broken in. My heart was hammering so loud I swore he could hear it through the walls. And then silence again. It was worse than the noise. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know what he was doing. Every second stretched on forever. When the cops arrived, the house was empty. The back door was wide open. They searched the woods, but they never found him. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. For days after, I couldn't sleep. Every noise outside made me jump. I started locking every window, every door. But then small things began happening around the house. The garage light would turn on in the middle of the night. The side gate would be unlatched, though I always locked it. And once, I came home to find muddy boot prints on the back deck leading right up to the glass door. No forced entry, nothing taken, just footprints. It felt like someone was toying with me, watching me, testing me. I tried telling myself maybe it was all in my head. But then one night something happened that removed all doubt. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. The lights were off, but the moonlight from the window lit the room just enough. That's when I noticed it. A shape, a silhouette, standing perfectly still in the yard. I squinted, thinking maybe it was just the shadow of a tree. But then it moved, slowly, tilting its head like it was studying me. I dropped the glass and it shattered on the floor. When I flicked on the patio light, the yard was empty. The next morning I called the police again. They checked the property but found nothing. They suggested maybe I was under stress, maybe I was seeing things. But that night proved I wasn't crazy. I woke up to a noise, a faint creaking sound. At first, I thought it was the house settling, but then I realized it was coming from above me, the attic. My heart stopped. There was no reason for anyone to be in the attic. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly called 911 again, whispering that I thought someone was inside the house. While waiting for the police, I stood in the hallway staring at the attic hatch, and then it moved. Not a lot, just the faintest shift, as if someone up there had accidentally nudged it. The police arrived minutes later. They searched the attic and found signs someone had been living there. An old sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, a half-empty bottle of water, and the window in the attic leading to the roof was open. He was gone. He'd been in the house the whole time, watching me, listening. The man at the window wasn't just some random intruder passing by that night. He'd been staying inside our attic. When my parents came back, They installed cameras and extra locks, but I never stayed in that house again, because to this day, they never caught him. And sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night at my own place, I swear I can still hear it, that faint, playful sound. Tap, tap, tap against the glass. Before you go, ask yourself this. Why do you keep watching? Curiosity or something darker? Subscribe to Sights of Horror and feed the fear. The Hitchhiker, a true scary story that'll make you lock your doors. Have you ever let a stranger into your car late at night? I did, and I still replay that mistake in my head every single day. I remember his face in my headlights, thin, pale, with eyes that didn't blink enough. He slid into the passenger seat, set a small duffel bag at his feet, and muttered one word, "Thanks." But the more miles we drove, the more I realized he wasn't asking me normal questions. He wanted to know where I lived, if I was alone, and when he reached into his bag and I saw something metallic glint under the streetlight, I knew I had just made the most dangerous decision of my life. This happened when I was 28. I'm Liam, and at the time, I was driving home from a friend's wedding late at night. It was about 2 in the morning, and I had a 2-hour drive through rural Texas. The highway was empty, just me, the dark, and the constant hum of my tires on the pavement. At one point, I got off onto a quieter back road to cut some time off the trip. The road stretched for miles with no houses, no stores, nothing but patches of woods and fields. That's when I saw him, a figure on the shoulder standing in the beam of my headlights. A man in a faded jacket, thumb out, a small duffel bag at his feet. His posture was slouched, and his face looked tired. Normally I never pick up hitchhikers, but something about the emptiness of that road made me hesitate. It felt wrong to just leave him there. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and pulled over. The man grabbed his bag and climbed into the passenger seat. His clothes were dirty, his hair unkempt, and I caught the faint smell of smoke and sweat. "Thanks," he muttered, barely looking at me. He kept his bag between his feet, his hands resting on it. At first it was silent except for the sound of the car. Then he asked, "Where you headed?" I gave him a vague answer, "Just out toward Dallas," but he pressed for more details. "What town? What street? You going home?" The more he talked, the more uneasy I felt. His voice wasn't casual. It was probing, like he wasn't asking because he cared, he was asking because he wanted to know something specific. Then he asked, "You live alone?" The way he said it, it wasn't small talk. It was direct, flat. My gut told me to lie, so I did. I told him no, that I lived with my brother. He smirked, just slightly, like he didn't believe me. We kept driving. I tried to focus on the road, but I noticed how often he adjusted his bag. At one point, he unzipped it slightly, just enough for me to catch the glint of something metallic under the light. My pulse spiked. I didn't get a good look, but my brain immediately screamed knife. That's when I realized I couldn't just keep driving him wherever he wanted to go. I had to get out of this situation. So I thought fast. I pretended to notice my gas tank was low and said, "I need to stop for gas." A few miles later, I spotted a 24-hour gas station, glowing like a safe haven in the middle of nowhere. I pulled in, parked near the front, and told him I needed to use the bathroom. I quickly grabbed my wallet and walked inside, leaving him in the car. From the cashier's counter, I pretended to browse snacks, while keeping my eyes locked on him through the glass. He didn't move at first, just sat there, staring straight at the store. Then, after about a minute, He reached down and unzipped his bag wider, his eyes filled with a deep darkness. He glanced around, then suddenly opened the door and stepped out. He looked toward the store, then quickly turned and disappeared into the darkness behind the station. I waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think. After a few minutes, I told the cashier that I was in fear of my life. We called the police. When they arrived, they searched the area but didn't find him. What they did find was his bag abandoned in the brush behind the station. Inside was duct tape, rope, and a hunting knife. The officer looked at me and said, "You probably saved your own life tonight." I never saw the man again. But sometimes late at night when I'm driving alone, I'll catch myself glancing at the side of the road. And I always wonder if I hadn't stopped when I did, would I have been another unsolved case on the news? Think that was disturbing? Trust me, it only gets worse from here. Subscribe to Sights of Horror and keep your lights on tonight.